Assalamu alaikum viewers. This is the continuation of the last video in which we discussed the matrices, their order, and also equality of the matrices. Now we'll consider types of matrices. We have row matrix. What is a row matrix? If a matrix has a single row, then it is called a row matrix. A matrix having a single row is called a row matrix. For example, if we have a matrix 3 2 0 1, we see that this matrix has only one row. We have 4 columns, but row is 1. This is called a row matrix. If we consider another matrix which is 1 2 3 4 5, this matrix also has a single row, thus it is called a row matrix. If we have a matrix in the form A is equal to then this matrix, this one is not a row matrix because this has 3 rows. For a row matrix, the number of rows must be 1 by n. The order must be 1 by n. N represents the number of columns, and the first element or the first entry, this shows the number of rows. So in the row matrix, we must have a single row, and the number of column it is not fixed. We may have a different number of columns. Like in this case, its order is 1 by 4. We have 4 columns, 1 2 3 and 4, and the row is 1. In this case, its order is 1 by 5 because we have 1 row and 5 columns. This is a row matrix. This is a row matrix, but this one is not a row matrix because its order is 3 cross 1. This is not a row matrix. For a row matrix, we must have a single row. Then we have the column matrix. In a column matrix, we have single column and the number of rows may be different. A matrix is called a column matrix if it has a single column. Thus, a matrix having a single column is called a column matrix, and its order would be m cross 1. That is, the number of columns is fixed, which is 1, and we may have different number of rows. For example, A is -1 0 3 5. We see that this matrix has a single column. The number of rows is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So its order is 4 cross 1. Here columns must be 1. There is no restriction on the number of rows. If we consider another example, this is a column matrix. This is a column matrix. If we consider another matrix, for example B, 3, 5, 10, then its order is 3 by 1. Again we have a single column. This is also a column matrix. But if we consider a matrix C, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, then this is not a column matrix, because its order is we have 3 rows, so 3 by 2 and 2 columns. This is not a column matrix, because in this case we have 2 columns instead of 1. If we have 1 column or a single column, then the matrix is called a column matrix. We have another type of matrices which is called the rectangular matrix. Matrix is said to be rectangular if its number of rows is not equal to the number of columns. A matrix is said to be rectangular if the number of its rows is not equal to its number of columns. Then we say that the matrix is rectangular since we are denoting rows by m and columns by n. So for example, if we have m rows and n columns, then the matrix is rectangular if m is not equal to n. For example, A is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here we have 2 rows and 3 columns. In this case, m is not equal to n. The number of rows is not equal to the number of columns, so it is a rectangular matrix. If we consider another example, in this case we have 4 rows, m is equal to 4, n is equal to 3, m not equal to n, hence the matrix is said to be rectangular. We consider a counter example, that is a matrix which is not rectangular. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we see that we have 2 rows and 2 columns. In this case, m is equal to n. This is not rectangular. The first two examples, this matrix is rectangular because the number of rows is not equal to the number of columns. Similarly, this is also rectangular because the number of rows is not equal to the number of columns. But the third case, this is not rectangular because we have the number of rows equals to the number of columns. This is another type of matrix that we'll define next. The square matrix. Matrix A or any matrix is called a square matrix if its number of columns is equal to the number of rows. A matrix is said to be square matrix or square matrix if its number of NO is written for number. If its number of rows is equal to its number of columns. In this case, when m is equal to n, then the matrix is said to be a square matrix. For example, this is the matrix A, which has 2 rows and 2 columns. M, which is the number of rows, we have 2, n, the number of columns, 2, m is equal to n. So the matrix is a square matrix. The second example, if we consider another matrix like 1, 2, 3, 0, 5, 6, 5, 3, 1, then m, the number of rows, 1, 2, 3, we have 3 rows, and n, the number of columns, 1, 2, and 3, we have 3 columns. In this case, m is equal to n. So this is also a square matrix. And now we can easily see that if the number of rows is not equal to the number of columns as we considered in the previous example, then the matrix is rectangular. And if the number of rows and number of columns is the same, then the matrix is called a square matrix.